Hey everybody, this is Matthew Naiman from Shutterstock.com, and today we're going to look at the Burn Pack. Burn from RocketStock is a collection of over 200 high-quality fire elements. Captured in 6K, the Burn Pack covers all your pyromaniacal needs, helping you light anything on fire from doors to cars to windows and more. This pack is designed to be compatible with every major nonlinear editing system out there, but today we're going to be looking at using Burn in Adobe After Effects, Adobe Premiere, and Final Cut Pro. So put on your protective gear and let's get lit. Apologies to today's youth. I shouldn't be making fun of you. Here we are in Adobe After Effects, and we've selected some stock footage from Shutterstock.com of a dark warehouse in an alleyway, and it just looks like it's begging to be lit on fire. Now, one of the first things that we're going to have to do is do something about these pesky windows, because we really shouldn't have glass in the windows if the windows are supposed to be on fire. I'm going to start by making a black solid, or let's actually just say a dark cyan solid, over top of my project. And let's just turn down the opacity a little bit. I'm going to grab my pen tool, and on the solid, I'm going to mask out one of the windows. Wonderful. If I turn up my opacity all the way, we have successfully removed a window from the building, and that's it, we're done. No, I am lying. And there you go. Close enough for what we're going to be doing. We could go back in and mask this cable back in on top, which we'll probably do after we're through the next little bit. But first, let's start putting in some pyro. I think we're going to want to grab one of the 3/4 window elements, and let's just drag it on top of our composition and see what we're working with. Well, if I scrub through time, we're probably going to see some fire at some point. Yeah, it's too low for us. I'm just going to scale it down because everything is in gloriously gigantic 4K. Yeah, as you can see, we have the edge of a window with a little bit of broken glass down at the bottom. This looks like this is going to lay on top of our footage just about perfectly. I'm going to change the blend mode to add, which is going to knock out the black and allow this to give some sort of additive value to the background colors. And we're going to place the anchor point in a useful spot. I'm going to hold Y, grab the footage's anchor point, and drag the anchor point to the bottom corner of the window. And now, let's scale this footage until we think that we've sort of defined the edges of the window frame. Looks like the window goes up a little higher, so I'm going to want to scale this down a little bit more. Window goes up a tad higher. I think right about there. Let's take a look. Now, you'll also notice the bottom of the window does not line up, but we're going to fix that in a minute. Yep, height-wise it looks good. Now what we need to do is you can see a little faint straight line of fire down there, which is where the bottom of the window frame should be. So I'm simply going to grab our footage, go to Effects, Distort, and Transform. This provides you with a second set of transform tools as opposed to the default set of transform tools on your footage. And this one gives you some extra stuff like Skew. So, with Skew, we can skew the footage up and down to kind of change the perspective on it. And I'm just going to move it till it looks like it's going to align with the bottom of the window. And that looks much more believable to me. I'm also going to grab our footage, our fire footage, and just draw a real quick mask defining these two edges because they're front leading edges, and I don't think the fire would make it in front. But I'm going to leave this side open so that fire can billow out the window. Right, and because I've skewed stuff, you can see that my mask doesn't actually correlate to what it looks like visually. I could pre-compose this clip and remask it, or I can just grab the mask and visually make it work. Either way is fine. Let's see how this is looking. Yep, definitely looks like fire growing from a window. Now, there's definitely a problem that we don't have any window panes on top, and it doesn't look entirely realistic. So, I'm going to duplicate our base stock clip, drop it on top of everything, and then I'm going to mask out just the window. There you go. And if any of you have watched any of my tutorials before, you'll be able to guess where I'm going. I'm going to go Effect, Keying, Linear Color Key, and then I'm going to select something that I think is representative of most of the glass that we see in this shot. what you'll see is that with a little bit of fiddling, we can actually get it down so that we kind of only have the window frame left and a couple of little hints of glass in there, but it looks like the fire is in the building. There you go. Now, we've got a little bit of an issue with some fire snaking out there where it shouldn't. It really should cross in front of that. So we're simply going to duplicate our fire, throw it on top. Let's erase our mask, and let's mask out some areas where we would like it to always be on top of the bars. And let's see how this looks. Got a little bit of a hard line on the top of that mask, so we'll probably pull that up to around there, and then secret weapon, feather. Yeah, that's looking pretty convincing to me. Now, one of the other things we can do is above our dark cyan solid, we can create a new solid. Let's make it kind of fire colored. I can use the eyedropper to select our exact value. I'm also going to dim it down a little bit. Wow, that got really serious really fast. And we're going to drop it below the dark cyan solid. We're going to pull an alpha matte from the dark cyan solid so that we can only see this. We're also going to duplicate our dark cyan solid so that it stays visible. And we can turn down the opacity on this orange solid. What I'm doing is I'm using this orange solid as interior lighting. So I'm going to mask out part of it so that it looks like there's some fall off. Add a pretty heavy feather to that mask, and then turn down the opacity. And then I'm going to jump back to the beginning and set an opacity keyframe, jump to the end and set an opacity keyframe, select opacity, and then I'm going to pop open the tool with the best name, the Wiggler. Sounds like a villain that spends a lot of time writhing around on the floor. Anyway, the Wiggler is about taking two keyframes and then generating random keyframes in between them, between those two extremes, based on the frequency and magnitude that you give it. So I'm going to set magnitude to about 10, frequency to about 10, and watch what happens when I hit apply. Suddenly that layer is populated with opacity keyframes, and as I scrub through, down here you can see the opacity value moving from between 10 and up by about 10. And then when I hit go, what you'll see is that it looks like there's an internal flickering light caused by the fire, and it really improves the realism of our clip. Two small finishing details. We're going to add some interactive lighting outside the building. So we're actually going to duplicate our orange solid, put it on top of everything, drag it to be centered on the window, kind of embiggen the bounds of it a little bit, increase the size of the mask, and we're going to set it as blending mode add. And I don't think I'm going to have it flicker. I'm just going to turn down the opacity a little bit, and we're going to fade up to there from 0. There you go. Now the outside of the building is very slightly illuminated by the fire. And as you can see, our window frame trick put our power line back in front of the window. Let's pull back, drop in a new null. We're going to call this camera shake. Grab everything below it, parent it to our camera shake null, scale it up to 110, give it a position, give it another position keyframe, grab the two, select both, go up to the Wiggler, bring our magnitude down a lot, bring our frequency down a lot, hit apply, and there you go. A little bit of camera shake on our shot, really helps pull everything together. Looks like a burning building to me. All right, that's how I would start taking a look at how to use these burn assets in Adobe After Effects, but why don't we jump over to Adobe Premiere and take a look at a slightly simpler shot. Hey everybody, here we are in Adobe Premiere, and we're going to take a quick look at how we can use the burn pack effects in this particular piece of software to set a window in a building on fire. First thing we're going to have to do is pick which window, and I think we're going to go with this guy. It's nice and it's right next to the fire escape, so we probably don't have to worry about anyone in the building actually being harmed. The first thing we're going to want to do is we're probably going to want to knock this window out of the building. It's a little bit fiddly to do in Premiere, but we're going to attempt to anyway. I'm going to pop into 100% and then jump over to my video effects panel. And under opacity, we have this little pen tool. With the pen tool, I'm going to trace out the glass, and I'm going to add a few little, let's pop in a little bit more. I'm going to pop in a few little kind of sharp protrusions to give the illusion that there's broken glass edges here. Something along those lines. I'm also going to want to turn off the feathering and click this little inverted button. So now, as you can see, what we have is a jagged bit of window around the otherwise broken window. I'm also going to go up to File, New, Color Matte, and I'm going to select the outside color of this building, maybe make it darker, click OK, and call it Interior Walls. And then under our project, I'm going to grab our interior walls layer and drop it underneath so that we're not just staring into a black void. However, there'd probably be light fall off into the room, so under Effects Controls, I'm going to use the little ellipse tool to create a curved edge to this, drag it over to about halfway through, and then crank up the feather. Okay, let's jump back out to a more reasonable zoom level. There you go. So we've created our interior space in the building, and now we're ready to start applying some fire. So I've already picked some stock that I'd like to use. The first is a top left corner fire. If I drag it onto the timeline, we can have a look at that. And that just shows the edge of a window burning. And I'm actually going to put this inside to suggest that there's some fire going on in the building. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scale the frame size because the footage is massive in 4K. And I'm going to go over to our blend mode, and I'm going to set blend mode to add. So you can see immediately we can see what we're looking at and what we're trying to do. Under the motion tab, I'm going to reset our anchor point to the top left corner. That way when I put it in place, it's easier to scale it and get it in scale with the window. And I'm going to drag our stock layer on top and drop that back down. So this is just sort of a little fire detail in the window. I'm also going to chop the top off of it because this fire is already in progress. We don't need to see it lighting up. Brilliant. I'm also going to add some fire deeper back in the room there. So why don't we jump down to 3/4 and just find a nice big chunk of fire. That looks like that'll work well for us. I'm going to drag it onto our timeline, pop those two layers up, throw that underneath. Once again, go to Effects Controls, Blend Mode, Add, and turn on my wireframe so I can drag it around until we can see it. And whoa, that's a massive fire. We'll move our anchor point down, scale this guy down a little bit. And because the hard edge is on the left there and it's soft on the right, I'm also going to go into our effects browser and I'm going to search for horizontal flip, flip our footage, wireframe, and let's slide that maybe down there and see how this is looking. That definitely has its moments. I'm going to turn down the opacity a little bit. I'm also going to chop the top off of it and move it back a little bit to avoid that first big burst. And now we need a big layer of fire over on top of the window. So I'm going to go back to our project, grab another 3/4 fire, drop it on top. Let's scale it to frame. Let's set blending mode to add. And let's get it in generally the right place, probably around there. I'm going to throw the same horizontal flip on it. Move our anchor point. Scale it down a little bit. Let's see how that's looking. I definitely have an edge there that I shouldn't have. That should be up against there, but if I rotate it, my bottom edge will go out. So I want to look for an effect called transform. We have our default transform tools up there, but what we want to do is we want to apply the transform that lives under distort in the effects window. When I throw that on, we're given a few extra tools like skew. What Skew will let us do is change the perspective of this so that we can get it into the correct orientation. I'm going to set the skew axis to 90, and then I'm going to grab Skew, and I'm going to skew it over until this angle matches that angle, and then slide this back over there. I'm also going to add a mask to this, just so that we don't catch anything hard around those two sides. I know it looks like I've done that completely backwards, but I intend to hit inverted, and then I intend to hit feather, and then I intend to hit play so we can see how it looks. There you go. In almost no time, we've put a fire on a building in Adobe Premiere Pro. Why don't we jump over to Final Cut Pro and take a look at how we can do something similar over there. We've got this video of a firefighter chilling on a ladder, putting out the remains of a fire. But I think the shot would be a little bit more dramatic if just the wood on the edges of these windows was still a little bit on fire. We're not going to put a big raging fire into this shot because we don't want to hurt our brave first responder. This shot presents one interesting technical challenge. If you look at it, you can actually see that the shot's moving a little bit, and then there is a bit of a pan up towards the end. Normally I would tackle a shot like this in Adobe After Effects where I could track motion, but I thought it would be interesting to show you guys how to deal with problematic footage like this in Final Cut Pro. So I'm going to select my clip, and then over in the video inspector, which if you can't see, make sure you click that little button there. There's a little tab that's usually hidden that says Stabilization. If you click Show, it'll pop open. Click the check mark. And then it's going to sit and it's going to stabilize the motion. You can pick a couple of different methods: automatic, inertial cam, smooth cam. See, so here it goes, analyzing for dominant motion. But what that's going to do is that's going to take the movement and attempt to smooth it out. Now that'll be nicer and it'll be easier to work with, but it's not exactly what we need because I'm not using any plugins in Final Cut for these tutorials, and I don't really have a nice way to track motion other than manually keyframing things. So what I'm going to do is under Stabilization, I'm going to go back to Automatic, and then I'm going to click this little tab, Tripod Mode. You'll notice the footage got bigger there. That's because it's cutting off the edges and it's automatically moving around the footage to stabilize it. Now if I hit play, you'll see that it looks like the footage was actually shot on a tripod. And if your footage isn't too shaky, this actually does a really, really nice job. Now I'm free to go down to my stock, find my burning window clips, drop it on top, and change my blending mode to add. I can now enable my wireframe, drag this to wherever I want. Let's put it right about there. You'll also notice that this footage looks tremendously slow motion in relation to other moving things. We've had fairly static shots for all of our other clips. This one has a person in it, and they give up the scale of the fire and show that it's moving slowly. The best way to deal with this is select the clip, click Retime, and let's change the speed. Fast, let's go about 2 times regular speed. You'll see the clip shortens, and when I hit play, the fire looks much more in scale with our firefighter, sells the shot 100%. Well, that's it for me today. I hope you found this quick look at Shutterstock.com's burn pack to be useful. You can find other great VFX packs just like this one and tutorials about how to use them at Shutterstock.com, and we'll be here to help you get the most of them. For now, this is Matthew Naiman from Shutterstock.com asking, is it getting hot in here or is it just me? Have a great night, guys.